We have Lukasz Olejnik on stage. Lukasz is a very versatile scholar and researcher, publishing in a very wide area of topics. And I'm really excited to give him a Swiss audience because I think he needs a bigger audience for his work. Please welcome Lukasz on stage.
Shall I start? Shall I start?
Yes.
So, hello, a pleasure to be here. I will speak about propaganda and information operations and why they may be relevant to businesses, organizations, states, but also non-states. So, why analyzing informational impact is being professionalized. So first, a few things about me. I have quite a mixed background indeed. So I studied privacy leaks via readout of battery sensor, the ability to steal data via the use of light sensor, like, for example, stealing the web browsing history from a user's smartphone. I worked on web standards. I was a member of a technical architecture group, so I know about standardization and analyzed various risks of cyber attacks and cyber operations to society, humanitarian aspects. As a cyber warfare advisor at International Committee of the Red Cross, I authored a few books. I'm an independent researcher and consultant, now also affiliated with the Department of War Studies of King's College of London. And why am I speaking all that? I'm speaking this because the topic we will be covering is very broad. It can be approached from many sides. Technology, threat intelligence, so cybersecurity, data protection even, legal aspects, international law, so it's being discussed all over the place. It's very challenging often to see what is relevant, what is not. So, for example, disinformation is not new. That's the popular cliche, but it's wrong. People say this just to say, oh, I'm speaking about disinformation, but this is obvious. Obviously, that's not really new. I mean, just as a precaution, not to be read as someone who is speaking about obvious things. But technology and dissemination platforms like social media or other channels, they are completely redefining the field. So they are unlocking quantitative and qualitative changes. But before we go any further, let's recap what propaganda really is. So we won't speak about disinformation, we will speak about propaganda, we'll call it propaganda, and it may use misinformation, which is the non-intentional spreading of factually incorrect information. Disinformation, on the other hand, is the spreading of such content in deliberate and intentional fashion. It can also be used to feed harmful, malicious narratives to people who would then spread it further somehow, disseminate, without knowing of the true nature. So you have disinformation as the actor, misinformation on the side of people who are used to that. And of course, using true information in propaganda and distorting how certain events are read, for example, understood, is also possible. So which is increasingly understood by militaries and cyber defense forces of state structures and, as I said, militaries. So information for effect. And we don't use the term fake news because it's too politicized and it's imprecise. So those three should be sufficient. And there are various forms, various channels. One may use, for example, faked websites, and here we use the Russian doppelganger threat actor who specialized in faking design style of websites. Here we have a fake The Guardian site. Of course, the look is fine, the content is not. But some people perhaps are unable to notice. It's very difficult to assess the actual performance of such operations. So it can be used from down, bottom up and top down approach. And top down might be the injection of narrative by a very high policymaker, the former Prime Minister of Russia, and in this case, Dmitry Medvedev, and then, of course, this narrative might be spread somewhere further. We cannot, of course, ignore, I already said that true information may be used. Sometimes it's very difficult to establish what is true, what is not. For example, when events happen and they're hot, like for example, a missile falls on Arab hospital in Gaza. And then a very quality newspaper like New York Times informs that it's an Israeli missile. Diplomatic crisis happens. People go to the street. It paralyzes some negotiations. Then after a while, it emerges that the missile was not actually from Israel, but it was shot somewhere else. But yes, it was a quality news outlet. Another thing, a missile falls in Pravodovo in 2022. It kills 2 people, destroys property. Associated Press issues a wire information that Russian missiles struck Poland, killed 2. For a few minutes, the world stood, because, you know, Poland is part of NATO. You have Article 5, collective defense. What's next? Third World War? Obviously, that many people thought about it. The thing is that this journalist simply distorted the wire, did not verify it well, or even made a risky bet just to be first. He was sacked. That was not the case because the missile was actually shot by Ukraine and as a trying to shut down something in defense. So sometimes it's very difficult to ascertain the veracity of information, which brings us to foreign information and manipulation and interference. So systematic approach to analyzing such threat activities, whether they are malicious or not, whether the information is distorted or not, is defined as something mostly not illegal because policymakers are reluctant to say that disinformation and propaganda is actually, well, completely legal. So they say just it's mostly not illegal. So it's coordinated. It may be spread by state actors, non-state actors. There are about 1,000 events now analyzed. Most of them are negligible. It's maybe ignored. Sometimes ignorance is the best approach. But FIMI is a trend showing that a systematic approach to analyzing information operations is happening. So there are frameworks, there are approaches, like for example, we may distinguish several phases. What do we do to prepare before something happens? We build resilience. For example, we educate, we test our analytical frameworks. When something happens, we identify a malicious incident. We first of all need to have capabilities to identify something, analyze something, then react if it's necessary. Sometimes work to take down some content. Now, here we still have several approaches. We can try to diffuse information before it gains traction, before it gains popularity, which is called debunking. Or we can be reactive. We can diffuse malicious narratives once something arises. But the problem is it's not always easy to see when it's important, when it's worth to take action. Because when we take action, when there is no need to take action, no need to debunk, pre-bunk, fix the story, explain, we risk that we will actually amplify the original harmful message, and that's a problem. So how to systematize it is a fluffy topic, fuzzy territory. Information is bendable, some facts are bendable, so let's use AI to try to strengthen those facts. And yes, AI have problems with ambiguous information, ambiguous decisions, so we need to design the frameworks well. They need to be understandable to humans, concisely describing what happens, perhaps classifying it in stages like in the kill chain. So what's important, of course, is as enthusiasts of technologies, it's worth it to classify event based on certain metrics, like what is used. For example, what infrastructure is used, who is behind it, who is the audience, what are the goals, if it's possible to estimate them, what may be the objectives. And by the way, if we reverse this analytical framework, we will have an offensive blueprint, how to design offensive operations, because information operations or warfare might be done in defense and in offense. And such a very, very short, concise, simple framework is Scotch, which considers a source, the channel, so where something is being disseminated, whether it's, let's say, social media or maybe diplomatic channels, what might be the objective, what's the target, as I said, what's the composition also, so what is the style or tone of messaging, because, as I said, information is bendable. How you phrase something will impact how it's being read. And here comes large language models. How many of you have used a larger language model like ChatGPT at least once? Raise your hand. Once today. Once this month. Okay, great. So you know how it works. We provide prompt input. It's been expanded, perhaps enriched with other applications like image recognition, and we get a response. We provide input, we get output. We don't train them. We either use trained ones, or we fine-tune them, or we use open-way models. And it's very simple to request an LLM to form a complex event description in Scotch format. It's very simple. We simply provide how Scotch works, what do we need. We provide perhaps longest description, and then we have a description like state-sponsored actors, so the actor deployed campaigns on Twitter to undermine support for climate change initiatives. Or the other. Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs utilized state-run media and diplomatic channels to accuse Ukraine of violating the Biological Weapons Convention, claiming bioweapon labs are being developed, and they used press releases and official diplomatic fillings, for example, enriching this, for example, with a real patent application with drones that are vehicles for spreading mosquitoes that are that can get rid of mosquitoes, evolutionary perhaps, get rid of mosquitoes infected with diseases, like in various places, like in India. So real patent application, so the grain of truth. Someone is doing that, well, let's distort facts, take something from, take some output from various places, mix it up and present. And maybe someone catches the bite, then maybe it's being disseminated, pre-processed by others, and maybe it will live on its own. And that's actually something I described in my book, Propaganda. I explained how Scotch works. I posted the excerpt from my book, and yes, the large language model created the very thing that I expected, very short description. So don't train them, use them as a black box, configure them, perhaps use even a command line shell command like LLM. For example, you may use it to argue that Switzerland must stop being neutral, and for example, arguing that equipping Swiss soldiers with Rolexes will contribute to that goal, and of course we get some Marxist-Leninist style as requested, Marxist-Leninist style and tone arguing that indeed that will highlight the contradictions in the Swiss societies, capitalistic and bourgeois, you know, the thing. So what about this is one tactic of formatting content, informational payload. Let's call it payload, like in exploits, because it is payload. It's meant to cause effects. And my favorite the definition of propaganda is indeed informational impact meant to achieve some effect. Very short, maybe expanded, of course, as needed. So let's use the relativization, belittling something, the technique, to argue that Swiss neutrality is, well, you know, perhaps not so impressive these days. And of course, we get a response using the relativization to belittle the neutrality of Switzerland. And we used something called persona. We asked the LLM to act as someone, Marxist-Leninist style, or laser pointer, no, sorry. Or a farmer, right-wing woman, or voter, vegetarian. There are scientific papers that may establish the performance of such personas. We may optimize for toxicity, for example. And in my book, I have a blueprint of fully functioning design blueprint of a propaganda factory, how to produce content, how to spread it, how to cover tracks. And imagine my surprise when this summer US Department of Justice unveiled that Russian media operators had some related system, which was also automatic. It has support for persona, for bots, for AI-generated avatars. So yes, it's being used. It was used on actual people on various channels, social media channels beyond, in various countries. Who knows, perhaps you got a reply made by such a system. I am quite certain that I did. So yeah, that's it. It's in use. Deepfakes, so manufacturing content, portraying people in situations that never happened. So far, it's fortunately still possible to see when such manufacturings and creations are made. For example, this photo is not true. We have Trump after assassination attempt and bodyguard smiling. Deepfake creations still have imperfections, but eventually there will be the created content will be well perfected. It might be difficult or impossible. Fortunately, digital platforms may receive submissions of suspicious content, and if they verify that something is a deepfake and violating rules, it's very simple to take down such a content en masse, massively everywhere. I mean, just taking down the file. So let's hope this works. And yes, deepfakes are already being picked up by scammers. Like, for example, to produce videos of Musk, Warren Buffett, or Giorgia Meloni to propose parting people with their money to invest in advanced fee scams. Like, for example, in quantum AI blockchain technology. Deepfakes were also used in armed conflict. In the Russian war in Ukraine, we had deepfakes of Zelensky and Putin of no impact because they did not gain traction. They did not gain users' attention. Not many users saw them. The Ukrainian one in particular, mostly no real people saw them until the media disseminated the information about this deepfake. The Putin's one was more proficient because someone hacked Russian internet TVs and aired it over hacked channels. So injected it. But still, the true impact was quite negligible. But so are the needs of informational warfare. But of course, you do not need to create deepfakes. You can simply hack, so do a cyber-enabled information operation with just recordings, like it was done a few months ago with several Russian TV stations posting pro-Ukrainian content. Now, how do you instantly detect that the email you get is phishing email or scam or something? Perhaps you notice that such emails are fishy. I mean, they contain spelling or grammar mistakes, something that you are sure that would not come from people from actually your nationality, speaking your native tongue. So say goodbye to that, because LLMs will perfect the crafting of such content in ways that will be almost undistinguishable, so you won't be able to detect it so easily. And indeed, scammers are using AI technology, and I would risk to say that every cyber threat actor by now is either testing or already adopting LLMs and AI technology in creation of content, creation of or analyzing of some policy or events, code generation even. There are some evidence already that threat actors use it to partly design elements of malware tools. So far, such users are rudimentary. They are, well, pretty basic. Of course, they will be perfected. So from now and let's say a few years, 10 years for sure, that will be a huge difference. Everyone will have a local large language model, so it will not be as OpenAI being able to detect that their systems are used for that, because the cyber threat actor will have their own models run locally, for example. That will be possible. It's almost already possible in using Llama or something. So hence, it will be important to operationalize such frameworks and perhaps integrate it with cyber threat intelligence by state structures, but non-state structures like businesses also. And for that, we can simply use STIX and TAXI, usual cyber threat intelligence formats, which can also be designed by, pre-filled somehow by LLM AI. So here we have, again, this Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs using Biological Weapons Convention, and we are using malware information sharing platform to fill in an event description and also attach a galaxy called Disarm to use a descriptive language from disinformation and propaganda framework description like Disarm. The problem with this framework is that, well, it's a bit bloated. It also mixes realms, some precautions and mitigation strategies, mixes words. For example, there is a solution like demonetize social media, but if we are a private company and we want to use this framework to describe an event and also suggested ways of mitigating things, we cannot demonetize social media because it's in someone else's hands. So that's a problem with this framework. It's eventually, let's hope that we will get a framework that is really geared towards various actors like private businesses, CTIs, and all that. The start of Russian war in Ukraine was about tanks entering Ukraine, but also, of course, cyber warfare against Viasat satellite internet system. But a month before, a number of websites of Ukrainian governments were hacked, and information this information graphic was included, which was in languages Russian, Ukrainian, and Polish. In this message, tried to play on historical resentments, difficult history between Ukrainian and Polish society, which is quite perfidious when you think that early in the war, so many, hundreds of thousands of refugees were welcomed by Polish society. So it was as if the threat actor wanted to put roadblocks here. But get this, the text in Polish contained obvious spelling mistakes. If they did it, had they done it with LLM like today, it wouldn't be so easily detectable. But back then, it was very obvious. So what? Some quality media reported it as if it was real, as if perhaps it was made by Polish hackers. It was Financial Times, by the way. So sometimes somewhere detecting scams, even today, might run into some roadblocks that in retrospect should have been used, and you don't need AI to that. In any case, that was probably the first such a cyber-enabled information operation that directly led to war. I said about Meliorator and propaganda factories. Yeah, famous. Propaganda factories, and how stealth is important. And indeed, masking IP addresses might be important. How to do it? You may be able to place infrastructure on premises in specific countries, and indeed, security services are dismantling that. People agree to host infrastructure that is proxying some shady traffic. Maybe they get paid for that. You can also use ad infrastructures, like it was done in early days of the Russian war in Ukraine, to pierce through Russian war propaganda. Now, I wanted to say that we are near the end. I said about state aspects, non-state aspects, but information operations are becoming relevant to corporations, to private businesses, even medium companies. Why? It's about brand safety. It's about detecting the activities of, let's say, even competitors. So it's about understanding the situation, and technology will be relevant because such impacts may cause even stocks going down. There are many of such events. So in the end, first of all, I was delighted to be able to spread the content here, as familiarize you with this issue, and why it may be relevant to integrate information operations analysis with cyber threat intelligence. Because the times are quite complicated, and I am not speaking only of the geopolitical tensions, but indeed the AI and LLMs, which are totally redefining the field of generating content, also propaganda content, which is also why I authored both books which now cover cyber-enabled part and information operations. And thank you very much for your attention.
Wonderful. We're running a bit late on time, and we need to redo the stage a bit. So unfortunately, we have to cut short on questions. At least you have the chocolate. And please see Lukasz during the day.
Yeah, I'll be happy to answer any question.
Wonderful. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you very much. That's the best present I could get. I mean, I love chocolate.
Yeah,
I just wanted to ask where I should go for chocolate and butter.
Wonderful.